In today's video, I'm going to walk through how we leased two properties off market in just 1 week. This is always a stellar result for all parties involved. It is a win-win for everybody. So, quickly, a bit about me. I manage hundreds of properties on a daily basis with the help of a fantastic team. I'm born and raised in Emerald, and I entered the real estate industry at 18 years old. Originally, I had the goal to get into sales. However, I started in property management and I have never looked back. It is actually very fun and rewarding. So let's jump straight into the first property situation. So the first property situation is the tenant that we secured the property off market for was actually renting through us. They were looking to upgrade to a larger home. So they were in a 3-bed, 1-bath property, and the property they're looking to upgrade to needed to have at least 4-bed, 2 baths. Now, I had this break lease come through, and it is a fantastic 4-bed, 2-bath property, very modern, luxury finishes, and reasonably priced as well in the current market. And the property was also available a few days before the tenant was vacating the current property, so the dates worked out perfectly. So what I did in this situation is I contacted the tenant that was looking to upgrade almost immediately after we received the break lease notice. Especially with leasing, speed is of the essence. You want to make sure that you move very, very quickly. So after we had that break lease notice and I let the tenant know, they were quite interested to view the property. And I don't like to do sight unseen applications. It just does not work for anybody in the long term. So within a few days of me letting the tenant know, the tenant had viewed the property and decided they would like to proceed. Now, this is what made this process very, very easy. We already had the tenant's applications on file. We had their phone number, email address, ID verification, etc. We just required a few updated details, and then the application was forwarded to the owner for discussion. Now, during the conversation with my client, the owner, the topic of pets came up as the applicant had 3 cats. Now, for any investor, considering whether dogs or cats are in the property, it always needs to be considered because yes, cats and dogs can cause additional damage to the property. So I explained that if there is a pet at the property, which there will be, and damage is caused by the pet, it is a tenant's responsibility. That is built into every single of our lease agreements to ensure that the tenant is held liable for that. And if the tenant has a pet at the property, they are required to arrange at the end of the tenancy the property to be professionally fumigated. This ensures the tenant fulfills their obligations if they have a pet at the property and ensures that when the new tenant moves in, there are still no ticks and fleas around. So after discussing this with the client, they were more than happy on this and agreed to approve this application. Once we had the application, it's important we let that tenant know ASAP. Once I got off the phone with the owner, I called the tenant to let them know they'd been approved. Otherwise, they may look for other properties and then they will be approved on that one and we will miss out on that tenant. So the tenant was updated on this, lease was sent, lease was signed, and bond and 2 weeks rent was paid within 24 hours. So we secured that tenant most likely within the space of a few days at maximum, and we had all the bond and 2 weeks rent paid, which is a fantastic result. And this meant because we listed off market, the owner does not have to cover any advertising fees. We don't have to do any open homes. It's a lot less hassle and a lot less stress. Now let's look at how we leased the second property. So the interesting thing in both of these situations, both were break leases, and both tenants that moved into the new properties were actually tenants of ours. So I do believe in making sure we do provide a valuable service to the tenants as well, because tenants do want to stick with a property manager who ensures maintenance is completed and in general treats tenants well. So the tenant was currently renting through us, but their mother was coming to live with them from overseas. Now, they had a 3-bed, 1-bath property as well, but their mother cannot use stairs, and the property they were currently renting had stairs to enter the property. There was 2 entries at the front and the back, both had stairs up to it. So this they needed to move to ensure they could accommodate for their mother. So, after discussing a few available rentals with this tenant, we did have one available that was already advertised, which they looked through, but unfortunately they did not get that one. I had a break lease come through for a property without stairs, larger square meterage, $20 more than what they're originally paying because it is a break lease. Sometimes rent can't be increased straight away. And there was air conditioning throughout, which the previous property did not. And in Emerald, air conditioning is essential, especially during summer and spring. So we booked a viewing again quite quickly. We had the break lease come through. I thought this would work for that tenant. I was correct. We viewed the property and they handed me that Form 13 to break the lease at the current property the exact same day. So because we had the tenant's application on file again, called the owner, put it forward to the owner. Owner pre-approved the application because the tenant hadn't actually viewed the property yet. As I said previously, I always want to make sure the tenant can view the property because advertising photos can never show the exact condition of the property. So we arranged a viewing for the tenant and confirmed that they wanted to proceed at that property. Then lease was signed, bond and 2 weeks rent was paid. Again, owner did not have to cover advertising fees, open homes, or any stress or hassle from their end. The interesting thing on this is that we actually had this advertisement prepped and ready to go. The team was onto this, saw the break lease count came through, prepping the advertisement, but I held off the advertising property for additional day, and because we held off for additional day, we saved the owner a few $100s, which is a great result. So I want to delve into why off-market leasing is a win-win-win. The great thing in both of these situations is that they were break leases, which means a tenant is required to cover a certain amount of rent or rent until a new tenant moves in, whichever is a lesser cost. At minimum, it will be 1 week's rent. So I know if we can secure a tenant to move in 1 week after the previous tenant vacates, the owner will have no loss of rental income. That is always a goal. In both scenarios we did, the move-in date for both tenants was around a week after the previous tenant vacated. So why is it a win-win-win for the client, the tenant, and us? So 3 parties. When leasing a property off market for the client, it means they have peace of mind. They know a tenant's being secured straight away. There's no rental income loss. That is, providing it is a break lease and we secure it within a week. If it is a lease renewal and they are vacating at the end of their lease, then there will be some minor rental income loss. There's no prolonged vacancy period, no hassle to try and find quality tenants, and no advertising fee, which saves the owner a few $100s. Now, what leasing a property off market means for the tenant? Again, it's a win, because they only have to pay a certain amount of rent according to the legislation. There's less stress because they know that they have to only pay a certain amount of rent, and most likely it will be less than what they could have paid. And there's no open homes, which means the tenant doesn't have to stress about keeping the property tidy while they're trying to vacate, which is extremely difficult. There's none of that. It's super easy. One viewing and everything is sorted. And when we lease a property off market, for us, the agency, it means we don't have to do open homes. We don't have to send staff out and waste half an hour trying to find a quality applicant. We don't have to filter through applications that come through online. We don't have to advertise the property. And the main thing, we have a happy client and a happy tenant. So as much as possible, we try and lease properties off market because I believe it is the best way. And if we can get a stellar outcome for the tenant and the owner, then I believe we should try to do that every single time.